Today we're going to learn about dragons, and all of these beautiful dragon pictures were drawn by the artists who are listening to the story today, second graders from Brown School. Tonight is the night that all dragons awake in their lair underground and sing in cacophonous chorus and fill all the world with their sound. They sing of their past deeds of glory. They sing of their exploits of old, of maidens and knights and of fiery fights and of guarding vast caches of gold. Oh, some of their voices are treble,
and some of their voices are deep,
but all of their voices are thunderous, and nobody gets any sleep. I lie in my bed and I listen, enchanted and filled with delight, hearing songs I can hear only one night a year. The dragons are singing tonight. Once upon a time there was a little boy who couldn't sleep. Now this little boy just happened to be a king. So he got out of his bed and he walked through the stony corridors of the castle to a tower where his friend Merlin was waiting for him. "I can't sleep, Merlin." And the wise old magician said, "Arthur, you should be in bed." "I can't sleep, I have bad dreams." "Oh," Merlin said, "I know all about bad dreams. What you need is a story." And Arthur hadn't realized that was exactly what he needed. So he settled down as Merlin began. Long ago, there was another little boy, and his name was Emrys. And Emrys did not know who his father was. "Like me," said Arthur. "Yes, like you." Well, Emrys lived with his mother, who was a princess, in a convent with some nuns. And the other children would tease Emrys. "You don't know who your father is. Maybe your father was a demon." And Emrys went and ran to his mother and said, "Tell me, who was my father?" "Your father was a kind, strong man who left before you were born." But the other children continued to tease him. When Emrys was 6 years old, his mother died. "Now you're an orphan," the nuns said, "but we will take care of you." Emrys spent most of his time in the woods, learning from the animals and from the birds and the plants and the sun and the moon and the stars. He met an old hermit who taught him everything he knew. And the hermit had a book of magic. And Emrys learned the secrets in the book. One day he read in the book that the next day the sun would disappear in the sky. And when he was talking to the other children, and they were teasing him, Emrys said, "You know, tomorrow the sun is going to disappear." "No, it isn't," the children said. But the next day the sun did disappear, and then it reappeared. Of course, you know that would be a solar eclipse, but they didn't know about that back then. And now the other children were even more afraid of Emrys, and they didn't want to play with him. So Emrys stayed by himself with his bad dreams of towers that tumbled down and of dragons under the ground. At that time, the king of all Britain was an evil, cruel man named Vortigern. He had killed the rightful king and taken over the throne. And the two sons of the rightful king had gone to France to raise an army to get their kingdom back. The sons were named Aurelius and Uther. And Vortigern was worried. He went to the land of the Welsh people where Emrys was living. And on a high mountain he said, "Here, I want a tower built right here. And if I go to the top of my tower, I will be able to see if any armies are coming to attack. You, captain of the army, have the Welsh workmen build me a tower." So the Welsh workmen with pickaxes cut square blocks of stone from the mountain, and they piled them on top of each other and made a tower just as Vortigern wanted. But in the middle of the night, the ground shook and the tower tumbled down. "Build it again," said Vortigern. And again they built the tower, and again it tumbled and fell. "Build it again." They did it a third time. And when it fell for the third time, Vortigern called his magicians to him, and he said, "Why does my tower fall down?" The magicians had no idea at all. But after they got together, they decided to tell him, "Well, what you need is you need to find a boy who has no father and kill him and sprinkle his blood on the four corners of your tower, and then it will stand." "Find me the boy," said Vortigern. Amrys was with the village children. And though he was small, he was a good fighter. And the big fat bully of the town started teasing him. Demon's child, don't know who your father is." And Amrys pulled back his little fist to sock the boy, but he couldn't move his fist. It was caught by the iron glove of a soldier. And the soldier said, "What did you call him?" And the fat bully said, "We call him Demon's child because he doesn't know who his father is." "You're the boy we're looking for," the soldier said to Amrys. "Come with me." And he put Amrys on the back of his horse and went off towards Vortigern's camp. Amrys kept trying to escape, and they wouldn't feed him, they wouldn't give him any water, so he would run to the side of the road when he saw a person and beg for food and water. He asked a farmer who was sitting there, "Could I have some water, please?" "No," said the farmer. And Amrys started to laugh. "Why do you laugh?" said the soldier. "Because that farmer is sitting on a buried treasure and he doesn't even know it." "How do you know it?" said the soldier. "I see strange pictures in my mind," said Amrys. They went on a little farther, and there was a man mending his shoes, and Amrys ran up to him and said, "Please, could I have some food?" "No," said the man. "You don't know. Your shoes will be stolen before you ever get to wear them." Just then, a funeral procession went by. And the soldier said, "If you know everything, tell me, how did that man die?" "He died by falling and hanging and drowning." "What?" the soldier said. "That's impossible." But a woman from the funeral procession came up and said, "No, the lad's right. The man was in a tree, and he fell in the tree, and his foot was caught in a branch, and he was hanging over a stream of water with his head under the water, and so he drowned." And the soldier looked at Amrys, amazed. Then they came to Vortigern's camp. And Vortigern said, "Is this the boy, the demon's child?" "Yes," the soldier said. "Well, kill him." But Amrys ran up to Vortigern and knelt before him, and he said, "My lord, my blood will do you no good. What you need is for me to interpret dreams." "The lad does have a strange ability," said the soldier. "All right," said Vortigern. "Why does my tower fall down?" Beneath the tower, far under the ground, there was a cave. And in the cave, there were 2 stone eggs. Within the eggs are 2 dragons. The dragons breathing is causing the ground to shake, and that's why your tower falls down. If you find the eggs, break open the eggs, and kill the dragons, your tower will stand. "Do as he says," said Vortigern, and the Welsh workmen with their pickaxes hacked away at the earth under the tower, and they found a great cave. And within the dark cave, there were 2 huge stone eggs. There were cracks in the eggs, and the eggs seemed to be breathing in and out. And the workmen took their pickaxes, and they chopped open the eggs, and in one egg was a dragon the color of milk. And then the other egg was a dragon, the color of old red wine. But before they could kill the dragons flew out of the cave and up into the air and began to fight. The ground shook with the sound of their screams and the flapping of their wings, and at last the white dragon grabbed the red dragon by its neck and shook him and shook him and shook him until he fell lifeless to earth. And then the white dragon flew away. Amrys looked at the sky. Vortigern doesn't know that he is the red dragon. Well, they were able to build the tower. It was high and strong, and every day Vortigern went to the top and looked out to see if an army was coming to attack. And within a few weeks, an army did come, led by Aurelius and Uther. And as they started to attack, the soldiers of Vortigern didn't even fight for him. All they did was join the other side. And Vortigern was destroyed within his tower, and he was burned, and he was no more. Amrys went and hid in the woods, and now Aurelius was the king, and Uther, his brother, was the general of the army. And Uther heard of Amrys, so he went into the forest and called out, "Amrys, I have need of you." And from amongst the trees, Amrys appeared. And Uther said, "I've heard you have special powers. We could use you. We would like to be your friend." "I've never had a friend," said Amrys. "I'd be delighted to be the friend of you and your brother." So he helped them as best he could. And one day the three of them were sitting together. And Amrys said, "I've had a vision. An army is going to come and attack you." "Will we win?" said Aurelius. "Yes," said Amrys. And Uther said, "Will both of us live?" "No," said Amrys. And Aurelius and Uther looked at each other. They didn't want to ask which one of them would die. And there was a great and terrible battle. And the army of Uther and Aurelius was victorious. But Aurelius was killed. So now Uther was the king. And he called Amrys to him and he said, "I want to build a monument to my brother. My brother was so brave and strong." "I will," said Amrys. "Let me think." And in his mind's eye he saw in Ireland a great circle of stones. And with his magic, he caused the stones to fly from Ireland to England. And there they stood, tall and mighty. And today we call it Stonehenge. But in those days, it was a monument to the dead Aurelius. And as Uther and Amrys stood by the circle of stones, suddenly in the sky there appeared the image of a dragon. "What does it mean?" said Uther. "That dragon is you, Uther. And you will be known as Uther Pendragon." And now do you see in the sky the image of a bear? You will have a son, and your son will be the greatest king Britain has ever known. And Merlin looked at the boy Arthur, and he said, "That is you, Arthur, for Arthur means the bear." "So I am the rightful king of Britain," said Arthur. I thought that pulling that sword out of the stone was just too easy, but my father was the king before me." "That's right," said Merlin. "And now in that story," said Arthur, "you were Amrys, weren't you?" "You guessed," said Merlin. "And now I think you better go back to bed." So Arthur yawned and went back down the corridors to his bed. And he went to sleep. And he dreamed of many, many nights sitting around the round table. And now we're going to take a little break and come back for some more stories of dragons.
Helmets on, and now our mouth guards.
Why mouth guards?
You should always wear a mouth guard while playing sports, whether you're playing baseball, basketball, skateboarding, football, or riding your bicycle. Mouth guards protect your teeth and your smile, and mouth guards are cool.
Cool!
The story that we just heard came from Britain. And now I thought we'd go into that poem and look at some of the other kinds of dragon stories. They dream of their past deeds of glory. They dream of their exploits of old, of maidens and knights, and of fiery fights. There are many stories about a beautiful maiden, a knight or a hero, and a terrible dragon. And this is one of them that comes from Greek mythology. In the kingdom of Ethiopia, there was a king, King Sisyphus, and his wife Cassiopeia, and they had a beautiful daughter, Andromeda. But unfortunately, her mother liked to brag, and she got into terrible trouble. My daughter, Andromeda, is the most beautiful creature ever. I think she's as lovely as the sea maidens that swim with Poseidon, the god of the sea. Well, I'm sure you know that Poseidon, the god of the sea, heard that and got very angry and decided to punish the king and the queen and the whole country. The country of Ethiopia had high mountains on one side of it and the sea on the other side. And Poseidon sent first a tidal wave and then a terrible sea monster that was like a dragon to swim up and down the sea coast so no one could get away. And the country was in terrible danger. The king went to an oracle. What can I do to save my country? And the oracle said, you must sacrifice your daughter Andromeda. She must be chained to a rock where the sea monster can eat her flesh. Only then will your country be safe. My daughter? But it was the only way. And so Andromeda was chained to a rock where she waited for the sea serpent to come and devour her. She cried and cried, but she looked up into the sky and she saw a man flying. It was the hero Perseus, the son of Zeus. He had Hermes' winged sandals, and he had a golden sword, a scimitar given to him by the goddess Athena. And on his back was a sack, and within the sack was the terrible head of Medusa with her snaky hair. He had just killed her. At first, Perseus couldn't figure out what was this maiden doing, chained to a rock. He landed on the rock, and he took his golden scimitar and cut her chains. I have to be fed to the sea serpent to save the country. No, you don't, said Perseus. I will save you. And he flew up into the air, and here came the sea serpent, and he dove down, and with his golden scimitar, he cut the sea serpent dragon to shreds. And the blood of the dragon spilled into the sea, and to this day it is known as the Red Sea. And so Perseus scooped up Andromeda and flew with her back to her parents' castle. But just then another man, Agenor, came with his army, and he said, wait a minute, king, you promised that I could marry Andromeda. And Perseus was so angry at these other men coming to take away his bride, he said to Andromeda, close your eyes, and he pulled out of the sack the horrible head of Medusa, and the sight of it made everyone who saw her turn to stone. And so Perseus flew off back to his homeland with Andromeda as his bride, where he had many more adventures, but he never again killed a dragon. And one of the most famous stories about a maiden, a dragon, and a knight is St. George and the Dragon. And he originally was from the Mid-East, but his story was transferred to England. We'll talk about this later. Now, another thing, yeah, it's a good book, and see, it's got prize-winning pictures. Another thing that dragons do is guarding vast caches of gold. Now, this is a story that comes from the Northland, from Germany. There was a king of the dwarfs, and he loved gold. He stole a great deal of gold from the elves. And he had two sons, Fafnir and Regin, and they too loved gold. They loved gold much more than their father. And the older son, Fafnir, killed the father and made off with the gold. He took the gold to a cave, and he stayed there with the gold for years and years and years and years. And gradually he changed from being a dwarf to being a great, huge dragon. And his brother, Regin, was angry and greedy and could think of nothing but, how can I get the gold from my brother? And Regin learned to be a blacksmith, but he still needed someone to kill the dragon. One day in the forest, he saw a beautiful boy, a golden boy, a strong boy. It was Siegfried. "There is my dragon slayer," said Regin. And so he took care of Siegfried, and he told him how to make things out of iron. And one day Siegfried was walking in the forest, and he heard a rumbling and growling. He came back and said to Regin, What was that noise?" "Oh, you heard the dragon Fafnir. He's guarding a great deal of gold. And if you kill the dragon, we could share the gold. If you make me a sword, I will kill the dragon." And Regin went to a tree, and he dug in the ground and pulled out a sack. And within the sack was a sword that was broken into 3 pieces. "This sword belonged to your father, Siegfried. It is the sword of the Volsungs." And Regin worked on the 3 pieces of the sword, and he put them together, and the sword was whole. And Siegfried picked up the sword. The name of the sword is Nothung, and he hit the anvil, and the anvil split in 2 pieces. "And now I will go kill the dragon." And Siegfried jumped on his gray horse and rode off through the forest, and Regin followed on foot. It was dark, and Siegfried rode all night long. And just as the sun was rising, he came to the cave of Fafnir, and the dragon roared and came out of the cave. And Siegfried held up his sword, and just then a ray of the rising sun hit the sword and blinded the dragon, and he plunged his sword into the soft underbelly of the dragon and killed him. And Siegfried held up his sword, and he kissed the blood-stained hilt, and some of the dragon's blood got into his mouth, and he could understand what the birds were saying. The birds said, "Siegfried doesn't know that Regin is planning to kill him and take all the gold." And Siegfried spun around, and there was the dwarf before him, and he looked at the dwarf, and the dwarf looked into his eyes, and he could tell that Siegfried knew. And Siegfried killed the dwarf. Siegfried went off to have more adventures, but he never killed another dragon. And another story of a dragon that guards a lot of gold is from The Hobbit, the great dragon Smaug.
That's one of my favorite. I have a video.
That's a great one. Now, I'd like to tell you about Chinese dragons. Chinese dragons are very, very different from Western dragons. Western dragons are evil, and they're always planning to do terrible things to you. Now, Chinese dragons are very good. They're kind of dangerous because dragons are just so big, but they're usually helpful to people, and they bring weather. And this is a story about that kind of a dragon. Once in China, there was a little dragon called Golden Dragon, and he liked to help people. He was invited to a great big party, and all of the immortals were there, the Emperor Dragon and the Rain Dragon, and they gave the Emperor Dragon presents. And then they ate a lot of food, and then they drank a lot. And everybody became drunk, and everybody was falling asleep. The party had lasted 3 whole days. Well, little Golden Dragon didn't like to do that. He didn't like to drink. So he decided, I'll go see how China is doing. And he went down to the land of China. And It was terrible. There was a great drought. The land was parched and dry, and he heard a little girl crying. "What's the matter?" said Little Golden Dragon. "We haven't had any rain in 3 whole years, and my grandfather died, and nobody can take care of me." "I'll take care of you," said Little Golden Dragon. And then he suddenly realized that a day in the life of the immortals is like a whole year on Earth. And there had been no rain on Earth because they'd been partying for 3 days. So he went up to the palace of the immortals, and he woke up the rain dragon and said, "You have to make it rain." And the rain dragon said, "No, I can't do it unless the emperor dragon orders me to." So the little golden dragon went to the emperor dragon's bedchamber and said, "He's got to come out and help." And the guard said, "No, he's sleeping." So the little golden dragon found the lady of the lightning and the god of the thunder and the wind god, and they made a great big storm, but there wasn't any rain. "Oh, what can I do?" said the little golden dragon, and he went and he woke up the rain dragon, and he said, "Emperor says to make it rain." And the dragon woke up and he knocked over the jar of rain, and it rained on the earth, and the land of China was now fruitful, wet, and moist. But when the emperor dragon heard what Little Golden Dragon had done, he said, "I condemn you to death." But all of the people on earth were so angry, they loved the Little Golden Dragon, so they made a lot of noise. They beat their drums, and they set off firecrackers, and they beat the gongs. They made so much noise that the emperor dragon got a terrible headache. "All right, Little Golden Dragon can go down to earth, but you're going to have to burn him anyway." So the emperor dragon looked down from the sky, and he saw a great deal of fire. But it wasn't Little Golden Dragon burning. It was a great firework display that the people had set off to save their friend and to show how much they loved him. I lie in my bed and I listen, enchanted and filled with delight, hearing songs I can hear only one night a year. The dragons are singing tonight.